Are we having fun yet? Are you enjoying this?
I am.
Well, I want to sit down here for a second, and before we have a little gift for you. I know we're going to keep it, you travel light, so
I do.
we got a little gift from all of us, and thanks again for going that extra effort to
Well,
be with us
thank you.
tonight.
Oh, good. It's some kind of a shirt, and I can wear it and remind that I need in my community something like TV Santa Barbara.
It's a
I just think
TV
it's
Santa
so
Barbara
good.
travel shirt. So
Nice. All right.
packs easy, folds easy.
Thank
nice
you.
to
I'll
travel
take
with.
that.
So we're just a couple questions, and we'll take a small intermission. Spain 2010. We went there. One of the highlights, and I have the page bookmarked, is Las Ramblas in Barcelona, the number one thing to do. One of the things that's happened here in Santa Barbara is our main street, State Street, has kind of undergoing a transformation to a pedestrian-only paseo. It's a 10-block paseo. There's parts that have worked. There's been challenges. Can you share any experiences that you've seen throughout the world on pedestrian promenades and paseos that
Yeah.
can inform the crowd?
You know, you can't hardly go to a city these days in Europe without noticing how the old center is car-free, except for cars that people who live there, or taxis or service trucks, that kind of thing. And there's a lot of boulevards in Europe that are now car-free pedestrian boulevards. And the ones that I know that are most famous started out with great public opposition, especially from the businesses on that boulevard. They thought, we do not want to make it so people in cars can't get to us easily. But there was forcefulness from the top, and they sort of dictated it. And it turned out that it's been such a success that those streets are now the highest rent and the most pedestrian shopper exposure. And the streets on the next parallel want to be pedestrian only also, you see. So they're jealous now that these people had to be pedestrian only. And it's caught on in Europe, and I have to remind myself, oh yeah, this is, because you forget it, it's just delightful. You're not dodging cars, you hear the birds, you've got green belts everywhere, and you've got public transit. The whole idea about a congestion fee that our president has decided is not a good thing in New York, it works all over Europe. A congestion fee is a way to incentivize people not to drive into the center without paying extra, and that money that is generated helps subsidize public transit. So there's less traffic congestion and more frequent and more affordable public transportation, and more people walking and using the bikes, and it's better for the environment, and people like it. But it's hard to a lot of communities are afraid of change. I know that because my little town, Edmonds, half an hour north of Seattle, if a European came to Edmonds, it's a little ferry dock, Main Street and 4th Avenue has a fountain, but there's nothing pedestrian, everything's with cars. And it'd be so obvious to make the fountain, 4th and Main, a piazza for the people. All the restaurants would have 30% more capacity because they'd spill out onto the sidewalk. You could meet your friends when you went down instead of seeing each other's cars, and it'd be good for our community. But we just can't do it. We have never had the ability to do that. So it's tricky in this society. But I think it's worth pushing because I think it's the future.
You touch on some of the changes that are happening throughout Europe, and maybe you'll get more into that in the second half. Are there certain places, or maybe a place that you're encouraging travelers to go now that may not last due to overpopulation or growing tourism or climate change?
I just thought of something I want to add on to that first question, because you started off talking about the Ramblas. Do you know the Ramblas in Barcelona? Yeah. You fall in love with Barcelona and the Ramblas in the old days. But today, it's a parade of tourists with no commercial localness because of Airbnb. You see, it got really charming in the beginning because pensioners were up there. Grandma was up there, and the granddaughter would come. They go shopping for a little parakeet or something like that. And the market served the local people, and it was just real people with their real shops and the guys smoking their cigar and reading the paper and connecting with each other. And then all of a sudden, tourists start going there. And if you're a landlord, you realize I can do the Airbnb short-term rental thing and make 4 times the income in a month than renting to some of this people with fixed incomes. So the rent triples. The local people are driven to the concrete suburbs with no charm, and the cobbled, delightful places are now inhabited by tourists who come and go, and there's nothing to keep these characteristic shops in business, so they all change to be little touristy shops, little cafes and little gift shops and little, gifty edibles. And it's, people who didn't know the other one, they think it's nice. But if you know the other one, you really miss it today. There's an ethical thing about short-term rentals, and I don't go to the mat on it. I think they're amazingly efficient and handy. But you got to remember, if you do it in the core of a town, you're ruining a neighborhood. And people who have been there for generations can no longer afford it. And I've got dear friends of mine who have all their life been renting, and now they can't afford to rent, and they have to move way out of town. So in my newest edition of Spain, by the way, Eric, that's 15 years old.
Yes,
you got to update it.
I know.
My newest edition of Spain, for Ramblas, it says R.I.P., rest in peace. It's sad. Okay,
that was a question. Is there a town or a location that's on the verge of there that you're recommending that people go to now before it's too late?
That's on the verge of losing it?
Yes.
That's a good thing. He said Venice. You're thinking about Barcelona, Amsterdam, towns, Bruges, Rome, towns that are so inundated with tourists that there's almost a backlash among locals. And you've read about that. Because in our journalism, if there's a timely hook, they go for it and they make a big deal about it, and then it might skew our impression of it. But I'm over there a lot, and I know that if I'm going to Barcelona in a month or so to work on my book, what they don't want is bad tourism. They want good tourism. And what is bad tourism? Bad tourism is tourism that, a classic example is 3,000 people on a cruise ship that come in and they run around and they clog the place up and they make a noise and pollute it, and they buy postcards and trinkets, and then they go back onto the ship for dinner and they sleep on the ship. Now, a good traveler will come with a respect for and an interest in the culture, and they will buy dinner and they'll stay in a hotel for 2 nights or more. See, that's a good kind of travel, and any place likes that. What they don't want is this stampede of stag parties and hen parties and cruise ships and the kind of tourism that hurts the community. So, yeah, some places are over-touristed, but we can go to those places and visit them at times where we're missing the crowds. If you go to Dubrovnik in the middle of the day in the summer and the cruise ships are there, Dubrovnik is a little walled town. And there are 3 cruise ships anchored there. That's 6,000 or 8,000 tourists. Where are they going to go? They're going to go right to Dubrovnik. There's more tourists than there are local people there. It's a horrible situation. One of my favorite things is to sit in a little bar I like just outside the wall where you got a view of the Adriatic Sea, and to sit there and watch the cruise ships sail away. And then I know one of my favorite cities in Europe will be all mine this evening. And it literally is all mine when I'm there, because tourism is, it comes and goes with the cruise ships. And you can really experience the place without that. So there is good tourism and bad tourism. There's a lot of crowds, admittedly. We are all going to the same places at the same time these days to get our, Instagram shots and so on. And I would remind you that one thing I'm into is what I call second cities. We all go to Edinburgh. What about Glasgow? We all go to Dublin. What about Belfast? We all go to Lisbon. What about Porto? We all go to Paris. What about Lyon? We all go to Berlin. What about Hamburg? And I could go on and on. Of course, you got to see Edinburgh. But if you got 4 days, I mean, Glasgow is just 45 minutes away by train. And when you go to Glasgow, you're going to have better prices, more smiles, less tourists, beautiful street art, edgy little mom and pops, and you can buy, you can invest, you can spend in a way that the money stays in that community. That's another thing, going back to that previous question. With my tour company, we work very hard to only go to mom and pops and use hotels and restaurants that are owned and operated locally.
Shifting gears a little bit, I want to talk about content creation. You've been producing television shows, radio shows for decades. The thing I like about TV Santa Barbara is we can do long-form broadcasts, so long-form shows. We don't have to be 28, 30. We can, have these detailed conversations, these community conversations, and it's really important. It's really enjoyable too. In today's society, it's a lot more, a little bit snappy.
Yeah.
And you have more of a formula with 18, 12, 18 minutes.
Yeah.
Can you speak about maybe some of the importance of longer form?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. When I'm doing a pledge drive, I like to say I'm thankful that as a consumer and a producer of public television content and radio content, that I can produce a show that assumes an attention span. A lot of people assume no attention span. And people will tell me, no, they'll only listen for 3 or 4 minutes. Well, if all you want is people hyper active that are just bouncing around everywhere, if that's your quality, the kind of people you want to click on you, well, that's probably wise. But I'm not going to lower my standards just to get more clicks. I've got something to say, and it takes a few minutes to say it. And we don't need to say everybody has to be thoughtful and long form, but it is good to have one place for thoughtful people who can handle long form can go to really learn about something. Because the world's complicated. Hitler came to power, if I may transition gracefully, by making complicated problems easy to fix. It's just a slogan. Some people are really good at making slogans. It can be just a flat-out lie, and they say it over and over and over, and they develop a base. And they're able to derail a democracy. And there's a new word I've never heard before. It's called legacy media. Maybe it's been around, but I've never heard it used. And who's saying it? Right-wing autocrats and oligarchs. They're talking about legacy media. What does that mean? They're priming us to think that it's a bad thing, kind of like deep state. What is deep state? It is institutions. America is deep state. And if you don't know that, go to a place that has a broken state, and then you wish you had our system. I don't know what was so broke in the United States of America, because it's complicated to run a country like ours. It's complicated. You can't do it with a chainsaw. So, you need media. You need media. They're going to come for public media. They're going to come for CBS and NBC and ABC even. Because what's the favorite kind of media for an oligarch? The social media that they already own, right? That's how you manipulate a society. You need an electorate that's engaged and informed. That's the worst thing. If you go to Germany right now, you're going to find a society that has learned the hard way what happens when you've got a easy to manipulate public. And I've found in 30 years of traveling in Germany, they do more to work to educate people about their hard history than any place I've ever been. We're trying to cover our history up. Germany's acknowledging it and learning from it. It's a beautiful, inspiring thing. But they're gonna line out public media. What pisses off right-wingers about public media? It creates creative thinkers. That's the problem with public media, I think. And we need media. It's the most impactful thing for young Americans. Our problems are becoming more complex than ever. And it's not a bumper sticker. That's one thing I love about travel is you can't help but get beyond the bumper stickers and talk to real people. We'll talk about it later, but I'm so excited about not you don't need to go forever. You got to remember people have other things to do today. But when I do my radio show, I've done a radio show in public radio for 15 years. We're on 400 stations, and we have what's considered long form. Now, it used to be an hour-long thing. When I started, you could do a whole hour interview. That doesn't work anymore. But we have, it's a clock you produce, and everybody just runs it. It's 12 minutes, 18 minutes, and 18 minutes with a little break for a station identity or whatever there. But it's always A, B, B. 12, 18, 18. And that's long. And consultants have told us if you want your radio show to be more popular, it's got to be 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, you know, all those little tiny things. And that's for commercial media. That's why we have commercial media. But we don't have to be clickbait. We don't have to be playing to the restless people mostly. We want to tell the story. And I think TV Santa Barbara that's their mission, to tell the story with the community in mind. And that's why clearly it's a treasure in this community, and I'm just inspired by that. I'm going to take it home, the idea.
Thank you, Rick. And last question, and then we'll hit a little short break. When we were planning for our 50th anniversary last year, a little bit before, you know, I had heard you, and I don't think anybody else speaks as eloquently as to the importance of non-commercial media. Not controlled by, you know, a few corporations, the freedom to give voice to everybody in the community, you know, an operation of a media center that's very accessible to everyone, 2 non-commercial channels. Megan touched on some of the ways that you can get involved, become a volunteer, attend our events, watch the channels. And then another important piece is funding from listeners like you, audience members like you. We have on the back of your brochures little QR codes. If you feel like making a donation of any amount today, we'd really welcome that as we head into our 50th year. As I leave this today, can you speak a little bit about that, the importance of supporting our community?
You know, when you get more mature in your citizenship, I think you realize that there's certain dimensions of your community that you really care about that cannot make it on ticket sales alone or something like that. It takes leaders. It takes people that really want to invest in the future, and they care about the fabric of their democracy, and they know that great cities don't just happen. People are sitting through endless meetings, dealing with all sorts of problems that we're just oblivious to. It's very complicated to run a TV station or a radio station, and you can design it to be advertiser driven, or you can design it to be public supported. And again, there's a place for both. But it's an oasis of thoughtfulness in a time when the problems that are going to be confronting us are more serious, and I think they require more thoughtfulness than ever. I just really feel that there are powerful forces in our society that would find it more profitable and more convenient if we were all just dumbed down. Just dumbed down. They'll make more money off of us. And it's the same thing in my work as a tour guide. You know, if you just do the fun and the sun stuff, and you know, the duty-free shopping and the frequent flyer miles and what's the power of your sunscreen, there's nothing wrong with that. But if that's all it is, it's just kind of mindless. And while we're mindless and being distracted by this and that, and what are they going to call the Gulf of Mexico now? What's going on by the clever people that really have a lot to gain? You know, the ball's in our court, and we need some way to communicate with each other. And it's, you know, capitalism is here to stay, and I'm a great capitalist, but I think capitalism needs a referee. That's what a government is. And in order to have a citizenry that chooses a good government, I think you have to have a well-educated electorate, and I'll be talking about that later. But if you want to do something that is heroic for democracy in your community right now, I think making sure that you've got a source of media that's reliable and doesn't need to compromise itself to be viable. When I produce a show about Palestine, New York will not run it on that TV channel because their supporters will not support it. And I know that's a reality. But if you have a public television station that is solid with public support, they can run things that other outlets cannot run. And I think that's really important. It's more important now than it's ever been, and it's going to get even more important.